Okay, well, it's 6 p.m. I guess we can get this thing started. Good evening. My name is Eddy Cumins. I'm the Smart General Manager. And before we get started tonight, I wanted to turn it over to Director Garbarino and let her welcome you on behalf of the Smart Board of Directors. So, Director Garbarino.
Oh, damn it.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'm coming to you from San Francisco, where I'm taking 13 little girls to the San Francisco Ballet tonight, and I wish I were with you, but I want to thank you mostly for your involvement in this strategic plan. These community workshops are vital for us to be able to move forward together as a community and be able to make SMART even better than it is today. And it will be a gift to the next generation and generations beyond. So thank you once again for your input, all of it vital. Take good care, everyone, and all the best.
Thank you, Director Garbarino. Can we go to the next slide, please? Again, thank you, everybody.
I will, period, but this never happens, and I Zoom a lot.
Jeffrey Smith, we can hear you. Can you mute? There you go. Thank you. So in tonight's workshop, we will go over some workshop ground rules to start. Wanted to talk about the process to complete the strategic plan, as well as the timeline, the strategic planning process. We'll go over that, and then the timeline to complete the strategic plan. I also wanted to talk about some of our prior planning activities. Also highlight our 2022 pathway listening session, some of the things we heard during that time. And then at that point, I want to turn it over to Zoe, who will be doing a pathway update and providing some additional information. And then we will get into the meat of tonight's workshop, where we'll talk about strategies for the pathway moving forward. And then probably the highlight of tonight's session would be the open discussion, where we have an opportunity to hear from you. Next slide, please. First up, our ground rules. When you wish to speak, please use the raise hand feature. That's down on the bottom of your screen. To raise your hand, go to reactions and click raise hand. Keep your mic muted until you are called upon to speak. Stay focused on the question at hand and keep an open mind. Be respectful of others. I don't know how many people we have in the room here tonight, but it's a lot. We have a couple of pages of guests. So I'd also ask everyone to be considerate and allow time for others to speak. I'm not planning to have a clock tonight, but we'd ask everybody to keep their remarks to 2 minutes or less. Next slide, please. Also, we will be using Mentimeter tonight. I will just take a minute and ask everybody, if you're on your phone, you can scan the QR code. If you're on a PC, you can go to menti.com and enter the access code. And we will also put into the chat a link to this, but we will be using this to vote. It will create like a word cloud for us and allow everybody to see everyone's remarks. So I'll take just a moment and let everybody get this app up on their phones or computer. Okay, next slide, please. Just a little background on the strategic plan. A strategic plan helps us define the strategic direction of the organization. It helps us establish our goals, objectives, and actions in line with SMART's vision and mission. It obviously promotes collaboration, collective responsibility, and probably most important, accountability. The 2019 strategic plan was adopted in November of 2019, and it's required of us to update this plan every 5 years. And so this is our 2024 strategic plan that we are working on tonight. Next slide, please. Here's a look at the strategic plan process. We will start with refining our objective areas, going through and establishing goals, strategies, and actions. We will get to drafting the strategic plan, and then ultimately we will finalize the strategic plan, probably around the December timeframe when the board adopts it. Next slide, please. So here's the strategic plan timeline. I know I see some familiar faces in here. Some of you have attended some of our other workshops to this point. In January, we did a SWOT analysis and reviewed our strategic objectives. So far in February, we did ridership a couple of weeks ago, and tonight we're here with strategic objective number 2, which is on our pathways. In March, we will be doing 2 more community workshops, one on extensions, the other one on freight. And then we will also in March be doing a COC workshop that'll be on March 13th, 2024. April through July, the plan is to, as this plan starts to come together, is get out to and do community presentations, share with what we're learning, and to get additional feedback from the community. We'll continue those community presentations into August, and we'll also do a second COC workshop on August 14th, 2024. September through October, again, more community presentations, really, again, just an opportunity to get out and talk and listen to the public. And then we will also start to draft the strategic plan during that time frame. And then the November, December time frame, we will finalize the draft 2024 strategic plan and then take that to the board for approval, like I said earlier, likely at the end of the year. Next slide, please. So we're doing strategic planning. Obviously, this isn't the first time the agency has done strategic planning. There was the 2019 strategic plan, and also in early 2022, the agency did some strategic planning where we conducted a SWOT analysis to determine the agency's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. We also did a series of listening sessions on ridership, pathways, extensions, and freight. And all of that information was used by the board of directors to create what we call our Smart House. And we'll blow that up a little bit on the next slide. Can we go to the next slide, Zoe? So I thought this was really good work. It kind of brought our strategic plan together, in early 2022. But this house, the foundation of the house, lists our values of safety, integrity, stewardship, and continuous improvement. The pillars of our house are strategic objectives, ridership, pathways, extensions, and freight. Again, just those really big items that the board felt like the agency needed to focus on and needed to make improvements in. And then we have our mission, simple, we connect communities, and the vision statement that the board came up with is smarter transportation for a smarter future. Next slide, please. So in 2022 listening session, these are some of the things that we heard on the pathway listening session. Pathway design and construction. To be honest with you, what I heard during that meeting was concrete in the ground. And that's been a lot of what we focused on over the past couple of years. People wanted to see improvements to the pathway maps. There was a lot of talk about wayfinding and how that needed to improve. We talked about more bike capacity on the trains. A need for more pathway data, and obviously making sure that we maintain the pathways and keep them in a state of good repair. Next slide. So of all this information that we heard through the SWOT analysis, through the listening sessions in regards to the pathway, some of the strategies we came up with were construct funded segments of the pathway, continue to design and permit pathways, get everything to shovel ready that we could, publish updated pathway maps, develop and implement a wayfinding program. And some of the results that we've achieved is we did open Lakeville Boulevard to Payran, and then we have several segments under construction today. We have McGinnis Parkway to Smith Ranch Road, South Point Boulevard to Main Street, Golf Course to Bellevue, and Airport Boulevard to Windsor Road. Funded design and environmental for Puerto Asuelo Hill segment, and currently designing and permitting 10 additional pathway segments. And then we implemented a wayfinding program, and we hope to have all of those signs installed in the very near future in early 2024. Next slide, please. So at this point, I want to turn it over to Zoe, who is a senior planner here at SMART and has done a tremendous amount of work on the pathway since she's arrived here. So Zoe, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Eddie. So taking a look at the pathway today, there are over 28 miles completed by SMART and our local partners. The pathway currently averages 55,000 monthly trips. We have more than 9 miles in construction that will complete a total of 4 segments. There are another 5 miles, that have committed grant funds. And as Eddie mentioned, we're progressing design on 10 segments. So drilling into that a little deeper, as mentioned, we're progressing through design on several segments. Now, if you would look at the map on the far right in Marin County, we'll be looking at the segments highlighted in yellow, and we'll be going from south to north. We have Smith Ranch Road to Main Gate Road that will connect San Rafael to Novato, State Access Road to Frosty Lane in Novato, Vintage Way North to Novato Creek in Novato, and then the segments between Grant and Olive and Rush Creek in Novato. Moving over to the map on the left in Sonoma County, we have Main Street to East Railroad Avenue that will connect Pengrove to Cotati, and 6th Street to downtown Santa Rosa Station, which is right here. Now, the pathway segments north of Windsor will be designed and constructed with the rail extensions to Fieldsburg and Cloverdale. And for the purposes of the map on this slide, the northernmost point of the map in Sonoma County is the Windsor Station. Moving on, in addition to those 7 segments in design that we noted, we have successfully secured grants for another 5 miles of pathway across these 3 pathway segments. Starting on the right, we have Hannah Ranch Road to Vintage Way in Novato. On the left, at the bottom, is Prince Greenway Joe Rodota Trail to 3rd Street in Santa Rosa, and then Guerneville Road to Airport Road, which will connect Santa Rosa to unincorporated Sonoma County. And again, those funded segments are shown in brown. As Eddie mentioned, there are 4 segments of pathway under construction in Marin and Sonoma counties. They are highlighted here in orange, and I will again move from south to north. They are McGinnis Parkway to Smith Ranch Road in San Rafael. There's the section of pathway in between Petaluma to Pengrove that will connect South Point Boulevard to Main Street. From Golf Course Drive to Bellevue Avenue, which connects Roanoke Park to Santa Rosa. And finally, from Airport Road to Windsor Road, which will connect unincorporated Sonoma County to the town of Windsor. So in looking at the pathway, we have to realize that it really is more than the pathway. Our pathway is part of the Great Redwood Trail, which is a 320-mile rail-to-trail corridor between the Humboldt and San Francisco Bays. The pathway also consists of Long Promised Bay Trail and North-South Greenway, and it shares designations with other trails, including the Joe Rodota and Foss Creek trails. So delivering the pathway is really important in the delivery and connection of these bicycle and pedestrian corridors. As mentioned, the pathway as built currently is serving a lot of trips. I mentioned that we had 55,000 monthly trips on average, but that average, as you can see with the graph here, varies tremendously. As weather permits and the season allows for it, we've seen 76,000 counts on the pathway. And again, this is data collected from our pathway counters, which were installed in late 2022. So we want to know more about those people using the pathway, and we conducted an intercept survey in the summer. We were really pleased with the responses we received, over 429 responses. The survey was conducted in person over the course of 4 days at 2 sites in Marin and Sonoma County. 2 sites in Marin and 2 sites in Sonoma, and was held online for 7 days. It was offered in English and Spanish and promoted on social media. What we found was really interesting. More than 3/4 of pathway users are using the pathway at least once a week, if not more frequently. Many of them are using the path and the train as part of the same trip, which lets us know that the pathway is really serving a first last mile need. Various trip distances are being taken on the pathway. 30% reported using the pathway for trips that were as somewhere between 0 to 2 miles. 28% reported trips were over 44 miles in length. And of course, in many cases, depending on the trip, the distance varies. And we would expect that pathway distance would, pathway travel distances would change as pathway is further completed. So with that, I'd like to hand it back over to Eddy. Eddy, you're muted.
Thank you. Well, what I said was, great job, Zoe. This is where we will be using the Minty app. And so I would ask everyone to make sure they have their app up either on their phone or on their computer. I'll just pause a couple of seconds, give everybody an opportunity to get it up. And so our first question tonight is, what strategies should SMART include in the strategic plan to complete and improve the pathway? And this is an open-ended question. And if you look on there, you have the opportunity to put in 3 things before you click submit. So as you click submit, it will start to show up on our screen here. Okay, wayfindings at the center, complete gaps, lighting, keep making progress, seek grant funding. Fast climate change, lane stripes, Cloverdale, construction, more signs in town, closing remaining gaps. Complete gaps is now our main one. The highest priority. Public outreach. It's a freeway for bikes. More signs in town. I think I already said that. Trail maps posted. Lots of great feedback in here. Protected from vehicles, full connectivity. Closing remaining gaps. better structural section. Really great. So it looks like our three main words there: complete gaps, build it, and wayfinding. Lots of other good information in there. So it looks like looks like the voting has stopped. So, okay, Zoe, can we go to the next slide, please? Okay, for our second question, you will be selecting each strategy area based on the level of importance. And so I encourage you to read through all of the 9 selections in there and then select them. Each one, the first one based on your highest priority, moving on to the second highest priority, so on and so forth. I'd also mention that in the app, if you make a mistake or you want to change your answers, you have the ability to hit the up or down arrows and allow you to move your answer up or down. So we'll pause for a few minutes on this one, but this one may take just a little bit of time to complete. So I think I read this question, but if not, I will. Of these strategy areas, which should SMART prioritize? Okay, number 1's construct plan pathways. Number 2, complete design and permitting of plan pathways. Number 3, develop plan for future pathway segments, improvements. Oh, wayfinding jumped into 3rd place. Pathway maintenance is at number 5. Improve pathway maps, number 6. Pathway website, number 7. And bike parking, 8th, and others in 9th. Still have a few more voters to go. So definitely first and second are construct plan pathway, and second is complete design and permitting of plan pathway. Those two are pretty far ahead of the others. Wayfindings and developing plan for future pathways are right there, really tied at 3 and 4. Okay, just waiting a couple of more seconds. Improved pathway maps moved up to 6th. Maybe just another 30 seconds. Okay, well, it looks like we have voting is slowed, so we ended up first place, construct plan pathway. Second, it was, second priority was, complete design and permitting of plan pathway. Third was wayfinding. Fourth, develop plan for future pathway segments and improvements. Fifth was pathway maintenance. Sixth, improve pathway maps. Seventh, pathway website. Eighth was bike parking, and ninth was other. So thank you for all that great feedback. I appreciate it. Next slide, please. Okay, so I feel like this is kind of the highlight tonight, really the opportunity for all of us to hear from you. And I just ask everybody to please remember, raise your hand to speak, keep an open mind, be respectful of others, and allow time for others to speak. So if anyone would like to speak, please raise your hand and we will call on you in the order that you pop up. Okay, first up is Jean. Jean, please unmute yourself and feel free to speak.
Hi, this is Jean Severinghouse. I am so happy to see SMART in all the news segments I see, putting the pathway right up there with the train in importance. That's so appropriate since that's what I voted for. And building segments, that's great. There's one request I have, and that is to somehow prioritize getting the area's bike path within 2 miles of each station done fastest, because I like taking the train to Hamilton or Novato, but I can't get to Belmarin Keys no matter what. And you've got Hannah Ranch coming, and there's something coming going from Hamilton North, but get me to Belmarin Keys, please. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Daniel, please unmute yourself.
Oh, hi, and thanks, Smart, for all the work that they're doing so far. The slides that Zoe showed went through pretty quickly, so I do have some questions. I didn't quite grasp everything. Of the 3 items that are under construction, I see McGinnis Parkway. That's fine. I see that status going. But when will the Petaluma to Pengrove and the Roner Park to Santa Rosa work begin? That's my first question. And then my second question is, of the Airport Boulevard to Windsor, that pathway, will that have to wait until we get approval for Healdsburg, or will that go concurrent with the Windsor Station extension project? Thanks.
Bill,
Eddie,
real
would you
quick.
like me to,
Yes.
sorry to
Go
interrupt you.
ahead.
Would you like me to pull up that slide? We could take a look at it if that's helpful.
Bill Gamlin, if you're on, would you like to speak about the construction timeline really quick? Bill, are you on? Okay, Zoe, do you want to go ahead and speak to this?
Sorry, Eddie, I was on
Oh, there you
mute.
go.
Look, searching for my mute button. My apologies.
Got
Good
it.
evening, everybody. Bill Gamlin, Chief Engineer with SMART. Yeah, the sections of pathway from Petaluma to Pengrove, that section listed as South Point Boulevard to Main Street, will be constructed this summer and into the fall. Hopefully, if all goes well, we'll be opening that towards the end of the year, the calendar year. And then we are building the pathway segment as part of the Windsor Rail Extension project. So that's going hand in hand. So when the passenger rail system is open, the pathway will be opened as well.
Thank you, Bill. Next up is Eris Weaver. Eris, are you there?
Sorry, I started talking without unmuting. I'm
Okay.
so happy to see the work happening. Then the gap closures. I'd love to hear the timeline for the Roner Park to Santa Rosa gap closure. And I'm also very happy that two of the things that the Bike Coalition had been pushing for, both the wayfinding and doing some counting of how many people are using the path, have happened. So I'm very pleased about all of those things. My one pet peeve is looking at the maps and the miles that are marked as complete. There are, you know, in 2008, when we voted for this, the bike freeway that showed up in that Wordle is what we were all envisioning, right? A class 1 path of the entire way. And many of those miles that are listed as complete and path are along streets. And at some point I would, and that just bothers me because it's not as safe, and it's not as conducive to people riding. I mean, there's people like me who are going to ride no matter what, but it's not what we were promised. And so that's my one pet peeve, that we keep how many bits are going to be actually on roads rather than an actual pathway. Thanks.
Thank you, Eris. Brian?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. Yes, I wanted to second that last comment and also say something that I'm afraid maybe. Sorry, I'm going to pull. Hopefully you can hear me better.
Yeah, we can hear you fine.
Okay, thanks. I'm hoping it's not too late, but I was not aware of the public input process around the segment. I'm concerned about the segment between the North Petaluma station and Pengrove, and I'm particularly worried that pathway seems like it's designed to be on the east side of the tracks. And I think that's a mistake. I think there's a lot of important connections along the west side of the track. And I would really like to see the design looked at in terms of making sure this pathway provides the most amount of utility and connection to commerce and to other future pathways and existing pathways. There's a number of things that are going on the west side of that segment that just if the pathway goes on the east side, it's just missing out on all those things. It's all in isolation. And I think a lot less people will use it, and people that want to get from the North Petaluma location to all those areas on North McDowell will be, putting themselves in a harm's way by using the paths along the road and having a much less pleasant experience. So I really hope that there's a way to get the track to be on the west side. It may be too late, but I really hope future segments that are getting infilled have that as a priority. Thanks.
Thank you, Brian. I'm going to take a shot at this name. Is it Marja? You're on mute.
Yes, you got my name correctly. Thank you so much for trying, Marja.
Marja.
My name is Marja Tar, and I'm a member of the Petaluma Bike and Ped Committee, Advisory Committee. And we want to thank you so much for what you've done for Petaluma as far as creating some paths that are being used by multitudes of people every day. However, we want to remind you of the one segment that we are reasonably concerned about and have been for a number of years. And that's what we call the missing 500 feet or the missing 500 yards that goes from the path's dead end at Lakeville as you're moving south through Petaluma. You're on the path, you end at Lakeville. Our 500 yard or 500 foot segment is directly across the road, and it would connect to Water Street. Reason why that's important is that we would like to have a safer place for kids and for families to ride. We think that's infinitely easier and safer than it is to send our kids who dead end on Lakeville, down Lakeville in order to go to the SMART station or on their way to downtown. So we're hoping that that's still on your books, that there's a possibility that this can be completed. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. Next up is Jeffrey Smith.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Excellent. My name is Jeffrey Smith. I'm a daily writer. I have two questions or points. One is I'm a person of 68 years old. I'm beginning to feel vulnerable when I'm in places that are isolated and away from eyes. A lot of the route of the SMART path has no eyes on it. There are no windows facing it. There's no businesses facing it. You're basically in an area where no one could hear a shout. And my question is, or suggestion is, my question would be, are there plans for SMART security or local jurisdictions to patrol the bike path clearly they'd want to use electric pedal assist bikes so they can cover a lot of ground, but on a regular basis, on a daily basis, cruise the bike path, looking for miscreants that might be along the way, posing a real or perceived threat. There are sections of the SMART path, especially under 12, or crosses under 12, that I don't feel comfortable riding alone for that reason. And the second one is bicycles on board the train can be quite congested. There's always a shuffle that has to take place where people, or they stack their bikes up according to where they're going to disembark, and there's a conversation, and I don't commute on it, but I've seen it, and it's kind of chaotic. My question is has there been any effort, or will there be any effort to promote the use of more compact bicycles, or AKA folding bicycles? And I'm not asking that because I sell them. I'm asking it because they're a proven commodity and in wide use throughout the world. And I think we should promote them here instead of people riding their full-size street bikes when feasible. Thanks. And again, thank you so much for what you're doing. I've always been a cup half full on this project. I'm excited to see it coming together, and kudos to all of you.
Yeah. Thank you. I can tell you that our code enforcement officers are out around the pathway on a regular basis. If we get a report that something's going on, we'll go out there. But right now, today, there is nobody actually patrolling on an e-bike the pathway. But we do respond if we hear that there's an issue out there. That's not something we've looked at currently. We're hearing that feedback today. Yeah, it's not currently on our radar. The bikes on board, it's always a challenge. We hear quite a bit about that. We've recently made some changes. We removed some seats, so we've tried to be open to making changes on the train to create more room. And that's something we will continue to look at. There's a lot of bicyclists on here. I don't know that they all want me to tell them they need to bring folding bikes, but it is always a little bit of a challenge, right? To fit everybody on there. And if you ride the train regularly, you know that there's all shapes and sizes of bikes on the train. So we do our best to accommodate. At some point, we will add an additional car on the train as our ridership continues to increase, and that'll create additional room on the train. But yes, it is something we monitor. It's something that we watch very closely, and we will do everything we can to accommodate. Next up would be Pete.
Thank you, Eddie. Pete Gang, I am a Petaluma resident, a member of Safe Streets Petaluma. I wanted to echo Eris's comment. I wanted to echo Marge's comment about that 500-foot gap. I know it has been in discussion, but it's very frustrating. And for people riding south on the SMART pathway, when they arrive at Lakeville, they're just stuck. They have no idea where to go. And finally, I'm looking forward to the wayfinding, to the signage, because when people do find their way into Petaluma, they have no idea how to move through Petaluma toward Novato. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Next up is Warren Wells.
Hi, this is Warren from the Marin County Bicycle Coalition. I really just want to say how much we in Marin appreciate the seriousness with which SMART has been taking the pathway under your leadership, Eddy. It's been really great, and we've had such a great relationship with the existing staff and also the new staff at SMART. And I'll echo kind of much of Eris's comments. We appreciate the installation of the automated counters, as well as the progress toward the wayfinding system, and the ongoing design of the rest of the outstanding pathway segments, including the Puerto Suelo Hill segment, which kind of came from Mayor Kate and leadership there. You know, SMART's definitely moving in the right direction. But if we're looking at the horizon, which we're doing with the 5-year strategic plan, you know, we would urge looking at developing feasibility studies for closing those remaining gaps where riders are now expected to share the street with cars. This means downtown Santa Fe from 4th to Mission, which, you know, again, it's going to be in partnership with the city, but we'll cross the SMART tracks. It means downtown Petaluma, which we heard people talking about. And potentially, eventually, you know, looking at some way to provide a more all ages and abilities experience between Marin and Sonoma. You know, I look forward to a day when I could ride on the SMART pathway, you know, from Cloverdale down to Larkspur with my daughter, without us having to worry about sharing the road with you know, large vehicles buzzing past. So again, really appreciate all the great work happening, and look forward to what can happen next. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Next up is Patrick. Patrick, there you go.
Hi, Eddy. Just having some technical problems. My name is Patrick Seidler from WTV-TAM, and I want to thank you, Eddy, and the SMART staff and team for reprioritizing the pathway as an integral part of the SMART system. There's incredible momentum to get the pathway built, and just I'm really impressed with that. I'd like to echo the comments that Eris, Warren, and the Petaluma speakers have made, and really direct, I think it really kind of speaks towards actually the enabling legislation for SMART, for the funding of it. If you look at what happened in 2006, Measure R, it did talk about class 2 paths and off, you know, non-pathway segments, and Measure R didn't pass. And so they did a bunch of polling and studying, and they found out if they just changed it a little bit and just said they're going to build a complete pathway from Larkspur to Cloverdale, that it would meet the 2/3 vote. And that's what happened. Measure Q talks about a bicycle pedestrian pathway along the existing publicly owned Northwestern Pacific Railroad. And that's what the voters voted on. That is the enabling legislation. And that was in the strategic plan for 2009. But in 2014 and 2019, there was segments of that were pulled out. And some of the segments, as one of the speakers said, show in Petaluma in particular, that some things that are class 2 paths are completed. Those are not completed. That is not what Measure Q says. Measure Q says a pathway. And so what we recommend is that you look at actually working paper number 5, which SMART wrote, and that shows the segments and where they're supposed to be built, and talks about the workarounds. And there's a short-term plan that talks about some class 2, but the long-term plan is all a singular pathway. And so I think this goes toward the core value of integrity. And what we would like to see is, we'd like to see those pathway segments all re-included. We'd like to work with the city of Petaluma to define the SMART pathway alignment from the segment of the 500 yards all the way down to the city limits of Petaluma, and
Yes.
have SMART participate in that and work with the city, and possibly even bring it to shovel-ready status. And in addition, we'd like SMART to work with the Marin and Sonoma counties to complete a feasibility study for the Marin-Sonoma Narrows, that's what I'm going to call it, including a class 1 pathway along both the San Antonio Road, Petaluma Boulevard, and a class 1 pathway along the railroad right-of-way, because that's what's in the original long-term plans for SMART in that segment between Marin and Sonoma. So anyway, we urge you, I think there's a lot of voices toward it, is follow the legislative intent, make sure the maps are accurate, and let's complete those segments that aren't. And thank you so much for all you guys that are doing, Eddy, and all that SMART's doing. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Patrick. And, you know, I think that's something that, as we go into this strategic planning process, I think it's something that we have to think through. I think everybody knows that this is a priority for us. We're moving as fast as we can, and we're being aggressive on getting grants. We're using our local dollars as match to make these things happen. And You know, I can tell you this, our strategy up to this point is to complete what's in the 2006 EIR. And, you know, that's where, you know, if there's additional things that we start to look at and invest in, do you do that first rather than doing the things that we're focused on that was in the EIR? Those are things that we're going to need to think through and think about as we roll into this 2024 strategic plan. But that is kind of competing forces right there. But right now, our focus is on completing what's in the 2006 EIR.
And I guess what my suggestion the comment back on that is your enabling legislation is the controlling document, and the 2006 EIR looked at the short term, not the measure Q segments. And so that's what we urge you to do, is look at that enabling legislation.
Yeah, I think we're on the same page, Patrick. What I'm saying is what do you prioritize? Right? That's what we're going to have to work through. I'm not making a decision on that now or saying this is what we should do. I'm just saying that what do you prioritize of what gets done first?
And I think you're doing a great job of it.
Okay, thank you, Patrick. Next up is Henry.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I was going to begin my public comment by just talking about maybe the three things that SMART doesn't really have along its pathways, which are trees, benches, and water fountains. You know, a lot of times when you're walking through a street that's covered in street trees, has a bunch of benches and water fountains, it's pleasant, it's much cooler, you're more relaxed. A lot of the times when I'm biking on the SMART pathway, especially in the summer, it's roasting hot, there's very little shade, nowhere to sit, nowhere to drink water for miles on end. And I can't, you know, I usually carry a half gallon of water on my bike, but not everyone is like that. So if you guys planted, you know, oaks every 30 feet, wherever possible along the pathway, you know, a bench every half mile and maybe a water fountain every mile, you have people coming all over Marin to walk on the pathway because they know that's going to be almost 60 miles of a tree lined, bench covered, you know, water fountain filled pathway. And you guys are kind of forgetting of how monumental this pathway can become. It's going to be the longest protected bike pathway in the state. I mean, from Larkspur to Cloverdale, nearly 60 miles. And then you have the Great Redwood Trail from Cloverdale to Arcata. That's nearly 300-mile long protected bike pathway. That could bring bike tourists from across the world over to Northern California. And that's a big opportunity to host bike tourists, maybe do a 3-story mixed use bike hostel near the SMART stations, you know, and really cater to bike tourists and long distance walkers. Because like I said, it'd be the longest rail trail in the country. I mean, that's not something that you don't want to flex. You know, you really want to tell the whole country about this once it's built, you know, and hype it up. That's my comment.
Thank you. Matthew Hartzell, are you?
Yes, thank you.
Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Eddie, for this opportunity to speak and for doing this whole process and for all the progress that SMART has made on the pathway recently. It's really great to see it shaping up. You know, SMART and the pathway really form a symbiotic relationship, and together they form a world-class transportation alternatives to driving, greenhouse gases, and gridlock. At the last workshop on ridership, first and last mile was the #1 issue, and the pathway, along with the multimodal networks of SMART's local agency partners, is really kind of the fundamental building block of SMART's first and last mile solution. And users of the pathway are also an essential part of the SMART coalition, who helped across the finish line with the last sales tax and are crucial to the passage of the next one. So I just wanted to note a few of the things that I think will really help to consolidate and secure the vote of that part of the SMART coalition at the next sales tax. And that includes completion of segments that are where the construction is already underway, as you showed in the presentation earlier. Finishing things like bringing to shovel ready the segment over the top of Puerto Suelo Hill into Terra Linda. Constructing at least one or two other segments, in addition to the ones shown as in construction already, especially here in Marin County, since Sonoma County has seen a lot of progress on its pathway segments, while Marin has really lagged behind. So the crossing of Novato Creek would be a great one, and a very visible one that would, I think, bring in show the voters an example of the progress that SMART's making. And finally, for SMART to work with TAM to advance the southern segment of the North-South Greenway Gap Closure Project and the Central Marin Ferry Connection Project, which is really essential to SMART's first and last mile network, since the Larkspur is the terminus of the SMART rail network. But there's a whole half of Marin County to the south of the Larkspur station. And for people who ride trains, the best way for them to get to that Larkspur station is via the multimodal network. And so that southern segment gap is a really crucial gap. And if SMART actually owns the right of way and already has a memorandum of understanding in place with TAM for TAM to build the path, if SMART can help fund bringing that path segment to shovel ready status, because TAM has been having trouble finding funding for this, it would really do a lot to help SMART's first and last mile problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Tim?
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Great. I was just trying to Google what is TAM, but it's the Transportation Authority of Marin. I don't.
That is correct.
Great. Okay. Well, now I know. So my first thing, fewer acronyms. No. So I've got a couple things I'm going to address, and I'm really glad you guys are taking the time to do this. Eris, I'm the one that put in there that SMART is like the Highway 101 for bikes, and I want to echo a lot of people in there that voted for this, that we really need to consider the pathway as a freeway for bicycles, and it should be built to the specifications and all the care that we add to our streets and our roads, rather than being like an afterthought. An example being, if you're a quarter mile within Highway 101, anywhere in Marin and Sonoma County, there's signs, San Rafael and Santa Rosa, directing you to Highway 101. There are no signs telling you where the Marin pathway, where the SMART pathway is, unless you're on the path. There are no, as far as I know wayfinding will address some of that, but we don't seem to do that. As an organizational thing, I don't know, and I'm glad that you're on this Zoom. It's almost like the pathway is a separate project from the train, because you guys have really dialed in the train really well. It's fabulous. I love it. Love being on it. But since the pathway is kind of like forgotten and hidden, but as other people have mentioned, the pathway kind of helped pay the freight when it came to the voters and bringing them in, and we were all very excited about it because it's going to be a huge thing. So some quick suggestions, and they've already been mentioned. Usable maps of the pathway on Google Maps. It's very hard to find it on Google Maps and to use it and other online maps. Another thing is to query non-users of the pathway. Why aren't they using it? What are the barriers? Most people don't know about it. You queried people who were on the trail or near the trail, but most people don't know that it exists or where it is. Part of that could be signs explaining where the pathway is coming, not just the train itself, but along the right of way. So I'm here in Windsor, it's 2 blocks from my house. The signs don't mention the pathway at all. They mention the train is coming in 2025, but there's no mention of the pathway. And I think you're missing out on the chance to educate a lot of people. I did a query on Facebook right before this, asking some different groups I'm in what they thought about the pathway. One person said, wow, I have to say, I honestly had no clue a SMART path was a thing. I've seen the construction, just thought it was for the actual SMART train. Someone said it's a beautiful thing to be able to have a bike path and not always be on the road. I'm hoping the path will go all the way to Cloverdale, but knowing where to pick up the path where it breaks off would be helpful. And then another person who's a local like super bike commuter, some of you know him, he rode all the way to the 49ers game on his bike. He's nuts. He says there are no signs from SMART when it ends the Joe Rodota Trail to the gap on the other side of Railroad Square. If there are signs, I've never noticed them. I went there and looked myself. I couldn't find any signs. And so I think when it comes to wayfinding, it's not just along the pathway, but it's also to find the pathway. I drive to Sonoma 3 days a week for work. I cross over the pathway between like Penn Grove and Petaluma, I think it is. That's a great opportunity to tell people that there is a pathway that they're crossing over, but there's no signs, not on the path and not on the freeway. Same sort of thing at Highway 101. All of the exits have the sign for the smart stations, but they don't mention that there's also a path. So you might consider talking to Caltrans, and may God have mercy on your soul to try to get this accomplished, but some sort of way to get those signs put up too, so people know there's a pathway and an option. Two final things. I know you're all saying this, but don't wait for the train to go to Cloverdale. If you build the path first, which I know the funding is the issue, that becomes a marketing and PR op for you guys. And you get a lot more people to support you because we see it. And I did like the earlier comment about improving the pathway with benches and stuff. I'm sure there are models of adoptive pathways similar to Adopt a Road. So maybe businesses and organizations could adopt sections of it, clean it up, and possibly put in benches and shade. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Tim. Appreciate that. Jenny.
Hi, thank you. I so I'm on the board of the Sonoma County Bicycle Coalition, but I'm mostly speaking as an individual. And I also want to thank you all for hosting this workshop and for all the really amazing focus and dedication you have to the path. I do support all the comments, but especially the ones around really two things. One, making the path more beautiful. And there is so much opportunity in terms of public art and lighting and benches, as others have said, to make this really a beautiful destination. And obviously there are concerns, of course, about safety and all of that. And I was wondering if there could be Adopt a Path program, like we have Adopt a Highway that Caltrans has, or Adopt a Road. Maybe we have Adopt a Path, and this could be, each segment or in streets. Like I'm thinking of between College and Guerneville, that could really use some adoption of some care there. So what that would look like in terms of adding more beauty to the pathway. Also, the wayfinding, I really agree to all of the comments on that. And one other idea is, as I have grandchildren, and we often love taking the train and just going to another city on the path, and then taking our bikes and heading out. But we always have to Google, where in the heck can we go? We're not sure. Like, okay, where's the path from here? So along those lines, having some bike routes that take off from the stations would be very helpful. Some sample bike rides, and for families, with young children, so easy. And you could do different kinds. Also, this would be helpful to have on your website, some options for people who are looking for places to ride their bike. And then also what Jeffrey said about congestion on the trains. Yes, it's so wonderful to see all the trains with so many bikes. And every time we take our bike on the train, which we always take our bike on the train, it's packed with bikes. And one point to think about is the e-bikes. There's an increase in e-bikes, and those are heavy to try to lift up and hang. So pretty much anyone who has the e-bike, they're putting it on, they're just parking on the side wherever there's a spot. So they're 3 deep most of the time that we go now. So I don't know what the solution is, but it's just something to think about. And I know you have a free senior for the next year, free seniors and children. So there's going to hopefully be more bikes. Just something to think about with the increase in e-bikes that are happening. Yeah, so that I think was it. I really appreciate again your work on this.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Dave?
Excellent job, man. Hey there, everybody. Thanks so much. My name is Dave Rhodes, and I'm the co-chair of an organization called Walk Bike Santa Fe. And first off, I want to echo a lot of the kudos and compliments for the SMART staff and team over the past many years getting to where we are today. Myself and my son, we are very grateful for the facilities that we can enjoy and connect to the stations and ride our bikes, our bike from the station to other destinations. So it's great. So for looking forward, strategic plan, this is a big deal. we at Walk Bike Santa Fe, our mission is to make it safer and better for everyone to be able to walk and bike every day, anywhere, and specifically in Santa Fe, but have that option. And we really want to see the prioritization of the completion of that Puerto Suelo Hill connection, as well as the connection in downtown Santa Fe from the new transit center to the path that is complete north of Mission Street in Santa Fe. This is a super congested corridor. It's not safe, and making that a lot better for folks that are on bikes and walking will increase utilization of the train system as well. And so we're looking forward to that being included in the strategic plan. Lastly, I think about moving forward. This next plan is really important for a renewal of the tax measure, and I think we've got lots of segments that are still yet to be completed, but I almost want to think bigger picture and how wherever it's possible to think about that sort of last mile connection and the connection to the stations for walking and biking. I think will increase the utilization of the system as a whole, whether it be the pathways or the trains themselves. If it's easier to walk or bike to the trains, there'll be better utilization. And there's so many poor connections to the stations right now. And I wonder if part of our strategic plan is to better partner with other agencies. Not that we're not doing well right now, but I think that really trying to emphasize, and even somehow potentially as part of the next tax measure, fund better bike and ped connections to the stations and to the path. That may help it pass in the future. I could just see a scenario where, if we're actually able to get this thing off the ground in 2028 or whenever we need to go back to the voters for it, we'll be able to get more support if people see a greater vision with especially the pathway connections that'll increase utilization of the path and the train system itself. Again, thank you very much, and appreciate your openness for these listening sessions as part of the strategic plan. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Appreciate it. Jefferson, you're up.
Oh, right. As has been said by other commenters, thank you for hosting the workshop. I think for me, I think what I would want to consider is like the difficulty for certain parts of Southern Nevada to access the smart pathway, since the train runs east of Highway 101. Pretty much everybody everyone living in South Nevada on the other side of the freeway doesn't really have a safe connection to the safe pathway. I know, at least in my case, I could choose to go either over the Roland or the Ignacio overpasses, but unfortunately both feel equally unapproachable. And I know this is not exactly like SMART's like jurisdiction, so I'm not quite sure what SMART's role would look like in that. Maybe pushing Caltrans to adopt the implementation of more like acceptable biking infrastructure. I'm sure that SMART has probably noted that this is probably an obstacle in the way of maximizing the potential of the pathway.
Thank you. Brian? Brian, are you there? There you go.
Yeah, sorry. Thank you. I just wanted to throw out there that I thought about this while riding my bike with my daughter too, and relative to the wayfinding is, I almost wonder if there's a way that SMART could reach out to like Google or something, because it would be so nice to just be able to pull up on the maps on your phone, or Apple, or this map app people, just like smart pathway, and then Bing, it's like highlighted for you, because then it would just it would be so much easier to get from where you are to where the path is and see where the path is. And they're probably they're probably really good at that, so they could probably do it overnight. But anyway, I just wanted to throw out there. Thanks.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Jenny? Jenny, are you there?
Yes, sorry, I was unmuting. Yes, this is fantastic. Thank you. And I really appreciate your responsiveness and interest in completing the trail and so on. And I'm really enjoying everyone's comments. I just want to mention I'm from the UK, and there's a fantastic organization that has been working on this kind of thing for probably a couple of decades. It's called SUSTRANS, which stands for Sustainable Transport. So SUS trans.org.uk, and they have a website where you need to dig around quite a bit, but there's information on the National Cycle Network, and they have a lot of information if you dig far enough on everything to do with maps, signposting, benches, functional art, what the person just now was talking about, linking up with Google Maps, all that kind of thing. So sustrans.org.uk and the National Cycle Network, they've done a lot of this kind of work for a long time. So it might be a good place to find some ideas and resources. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. All right. Well, I think we've made it through all of our speakers. We've run just a little bit over time. So let's go to the next slide, please. So there's still time to give input. We want your participation. We want your input. That's why we're doing these listening sessions. That's why we're doing these workshops, really just to make sure that we're hearing from the community as we work on developing the 2024 strategic plan. So there's a link there for the online comment form that you can go in and provide your feedback. Upcoming online community workshops, excuse me, that we from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m., similar to tonight. On Thursday, March 14th, we'll be talking about extensions. On Wednesday, March 27th, we'll be talking about freight. And then spring and summer 24, as I previously mentioned, we'll be doing ongoing community outreach. And then fall 24, we'll have a draft plan and another public workshop. And then winter 24 is when we will finally finalize the 2024 strategic plan. So again, I want to thank everyone for being here tonight. I truly appreciate your participation and hope to see you at a future workshop. Have a great night. Thanks, everybody.